Good morning, everybody. It's Peter here from AJS, and it's my pleasure to welcome from sunny Canberra this morning, Kirra-lea. Welcome, Kirra-lea.
Hi.
And Kirra-lea, I just need to turn some sound off. Just bear with me a second. Peter here from AJS, and it's my pleasure to welcome from sunny Canberra this morning, Kirra-lea. There we go. You've just been welcomed twice. So welcome, everybody. And this morning, Kirra-lea, you're trying to avoid a lockdown in Melbourne at the moment, so that's why you're in Canberra.
That's right, yep.
And so we've had to compromise a little bit on the technology, but yes, we've got a lovely demonstration for you, I'm sure. And today it's sandcasting again. It's to do with flatbacks and multiple sprues. So could you tell everybody what we're going to get up to today?
Sure. So flatback and multiple sprue was terminology that I've created. Like, I just had to name this technique that I'm doing. And I had a student just literally here at Kin Gallery where I'm teaching. She said to me, why do you call it flatback? Why don't you just call it half cast? Because you're only casting half of the object. So now I'm thinking of renaming it from a flatback to a half cast, because that makes so much more sense. It's like describing exactly what I'm doing. I'm casting half an object. So we'll see. Maybe in the comments you can, after you see me do the process, you can let me know if you think you want it to be called flatback or half cast. And exactly what I've said, I'm casting half an object. So it's perfect for things like organic objects, like shells. Like, shells are really beautiful. They have some fantastic texture, but casting a whole shell is a lot of metal. So I'm going to show you how to cast just half of it. And that can apply to so many different things. Lots of objects you can use that technique for. It's great for bark, like pieces of wood that have a really amazing texture on them, but it's like a big chunk of wood. You don't want all of it. You just want that texture. And same with like coral. Again, coral is big chunky pieces, and you just want that beautiful corally texture. But for today, I'm going to show you how to do it with a shell. And the other one I'm going to show you, the other technique, is multiple sprues. Again, it's quite descriptive. So if you have an object, like I've got this one here, it looks quite simple because it's just like a pendenty thing. But the silver or the metal that you cast with actually cools down really quickly and can't complete this whole form if you're only using one sprue, so one entry for that metal. So I will show you how to cast something like this with multiple sprues. So it'll be, I think I'll do 3 sprues on this one so that we can make sure that the metal is fed into it at enough points that the whole thing casts. And I'm doing it with a little pendant today because I'm just going to stick to our little flask. But it's perfect for if you want to cast a bangle. It's the exact same thing. So if you have a giant flask, and you can, I'm sure AJS will have flasks. I'm not sure what their flasks are like. I've already got a large collection. But you can get big horizontal flasks, and you can cast bangles using those giant flasks. And again, a bangle is a large, big circle, and the metal just runs out of steam. It just cools down quickly before it completes. So you will have to use multiple sprues to cast bangles. So I'm doing it on a miniature scale with a little pendant, but the exact same process is applied if you want to cast a bangle. Well, I guess let's get into it.
This will sound exciting, Kirra-lea, so looking forward to it.
Yeah. Please bear with me and my basic setup. Hopefully it's going to be enough for you today. So I don't know if you can see, this is what I'm working with. A clamp and a lamp. That's my setup for today. So I'm just going to hold the phone in the clamp. And that should hold. Oh my gosh, please hold.
Oh, we don't want that falling down.
I know. All right. Just reinforced it with the mirror. All right, I'll just bring that over so you can see. All right, that's what we've got to work with today. So I'm using just the little flask again. We will be ignoring the hole that's cut in the side of it. I won't be using that at all. So we're just going to be using this flask in a horizontal orientation. So it's perfect for all those people out there who haven't modified their flasks yet. But also people who have modified their flasks, you can still use these techniques. Okay, so it comes apart in two halves, and we have the male half and the female half. The male half has the exposed lip. The female half has the recessed lip. So we always start with the male half, and I like to pack it lip side down and pack it from behind. The main reason why I like to pack it from behind is because I use a hammer to compress that clay. And if I'm banging on the outside of that flask and damaging it, it's not a problem. But if I was to be hammering on that lip, then eventually my two clay halves are not going to fit together. So this is for the longevity of your flask. So I'm going to be starting with the flat back, or as we might end up calling it, the half cast. And I'm going to be doing this shell. And I quite like this side of the shell. So that's the side that I'm going to be making a mold of. This side of the shell I'm not too fussed about. Now I'm going to put some talcum powder down on this surface. Doesn't have to be talcum powder. It can be corn flour, it can be plain flour that you'd bake a cake with. Now this is where it's going to get a little bit different from every other time. I'm not going to put anything in this mold, just talcum powder. So this is my parting powder so that my two clay halves don't stick together. So it's very essential that you put that down. But I'm not actually pressing my shell into it at this point. So I'm going to put my female on top, lining up that registration mark, and then I'm going to pack it with nothing inside of it, because I want to get a flat back to this pendant. I don't want to pick up the back of this pendant. I don't want to pick up the whole shape. But I can't pack the female without putting her on top of her male partner. So you always have to pack her while she's on top of her male partner. And this is how we get her to have that really nice flat surface, but still being recessed. Now I could leave the surface like that, but it's actually quite bumpy, which means in your metal version, it's going to be really bumpy and you're going to have a lot of filing. Or you can leave it quite textured if you want, if that's the look you're going for. But I like to get my chasing hammer and I like to burnish that clay. So just running your hammer lightly, I'm not pressing down very hard. I'm just pressing quite lightly on it and I'm just running that hammer around on that surface, and that's burnishing the clay. So it's making it really smooth. It's consolidating all of those little grains and making them very tightly packed together and very flush and very smooth, so that when you cast your object, the back of it is going to be amazingly flat and you're not going to have to do very much to clean up at all. I don't know if you can see, but the light even reflects off the clay. That's how smooth it is.
Yeah, we can see that's nice and smooth, Kirra-lea. So that's
fantastic.
Two good uses for your hammer.
Yeah, that's right. I just pushed a little bit of clay into that lip, so let's get that out. I could smooth the surface of the male half, but I find having this lip, it's like a frame. It keeps my my hammer head inside of that flask. This one, it doesn't have that, and you can slide off it really easily. So I find it's much easier just to make this the back of my piece and make it really nice and flat. All right, we'll set her aside for now. Let's bring out the male half. So casting organic objects or making molds of organic objects, they can be quite brittle and frail. So I'm really hoping that while I'm doing this, the shell doesn't break. But I have backup shells if this one does. So you can pack your clay less. It can be less packed. But it's a bit harder with this process because you need your female. When you pack your female on top of a surface that's not packed very hard, she will make up for the lack of pressure in here. Like she will compress this side. So it's a bit of a catch-22. What I like to do as a compromise is I've just picked up the flask and see how the back of it's bulging a little bit. It's gone a little bit convex. That's because I'm letting the clay move out of the way to make room for that shell and holding the shell down still. Now I'm pressing the back of that flask nice and flush again. And that's the best way I've found of getting your organic object to move down into the clay to the halfway point without applying too much pressure and breaking it. But this way it just allows the clay to just move out of the way because you're actually giving it a space for it to move. And then when you press back down onto it again, it's sort of moving and shifting out of the way, but it's also really pressing quite tight against the back of this shell, which makes a really nice crisp impression. You should pick up a lot of detail. So see how all of that shell that's sitting proud, that's the part of the shell that you will not be casting. So, you're losing a fair bit of bulk there. You're saving yourself some metal. Let's gently pull that out. There we go, just pat that down. Some of it did pull away a little bit, but that's okay, we'll just pat it down. Wonderful. Now, we still need to do our sprue hole and funnel on this side, but at the moment, it's a little bit hard to tell where to put it. So this is another little trick for helping you to find or to orientate yourself in the flask. Just re-talcum powder up that surface on the male side and close your flask again, lining up that registration mark. Give it a little bit of a press. Press with your thumbs and your fingers underneath, just on that clay, just to make sure those two clay halves are in contact. And then pull it apart. And you've got like a ghost version of where your shell is. So where the talcum powder isn't is where your shell's impression is. And that's going to give you a really great idea of where to place your sprue hole and funnel. So let's do that now. I'm gonna place it up near the top here, right there. And using my straw. The straw is perfect because it's about 6 millimeters in diameter, and that seems to be the perfect balance of having it wide enough to allow your metal to flow through without cooling too quickly, but also easy enough for you to clean off. Any bigger and it seems to be a pain in the ass for you to cut off. Like your bolt cutters could probably get through it a bit easier, but saw piercing it just becomes a pain. So 6 millimeters seems to be the sweet spot.
Now, what was your main criteria for selecting that point for that sprue hole there, Kirra-lea?
Okay, so the reason why, so if we're looking at the shell itself, I'm going to be pouring it in from about here. The main reason why I've chosen to do that is I'm going to show you something else a little bit fun, if I remember where I put it. There. I'm going to, instead of having the back completely flat, I'm going to be pressing this little shell into the back of it to create this sort of starburst organic texture on the back of my pendant. So instead of having it completely flat and smooth, which is totally an option and totally awesome as well, but I'm going to make the back of it a little bit more interesting by pressing this shell into the back of it and creating a texture. And I wanted that to be down here. So I'm leaving myself room to pretty up the back of this pendant. Clean up your funnel and your sprue hole. You need to make sure that there's no loose bits of clay rolling around in there. We don't want that loose clay following our metal into our casting. It creates horrible porosity, or it can really mar your surface. So I'm just going to lightly use my hammer again to smooth down that surface, because I have just gone and fussed with it a little bit and it might have puckered up a bit. So if the surface is puckered up a bit in your silver version or your metal version, means there's going to be a divot. We don't want that. So let's just make that nice and smooth again. Let's also, while we're here, do an air vent, which is going to be just down here. So I'm placing it there because I want the metal to shoot in here and travel all the way down. And let's get this cute little shell and add some texture. So I'm just gonna roll that shell
Very flash.
Cool. That's it. Let's close that up and cast. I'm going to be bringing you over to the soldering bench, and hopefully you guys will be able to see well enough. Apologies for all of this. So let's head on over here. I'm going to set you guys up just here. All right, how's that, Peter? Can you see? Because I can't see what you're doing.
Yeah, no, we can see what you're going to be doing there, Kirra-lea.
Fantastic. All right. So safety glasses on, and let's chuck some metal in this crucible. Always make sure you've got more than you think you need. It's a bit of a guessing game. Oh, look, I'll just add a little bit more in. It's always best to have more metal than you think you need. And that extra weight will help force all of that metal to fill your flask completely. All right, so when I turn this torch on, you're not going to be able to hear me. It sort of cancels out the noise. So I'll just quickly run through. Not sure if anybody's seen one of these before, but it's a different way of lighting your torch. So instead of a lighter, you can use this, I guess it's called a mechanical or electrical, I'm not sure what you call it. It takes a battery. So you press on these little gold parts and then a spark will fire in that little cage. So if you're worried about having lighters laying around, this would be a great option. And apparently Ingrid from Kin was telling me she's had this about 5 years and she hasn't had to replace the battery yet. So I think that's a really, really sustainable option to lighters.
And that way people who smoke aren't going to steal it, are they?
That's right. So I'm using LPG gas and oxygen. So the red is the oxygen, the green is the gas. I'm using a size 7 tip, and that's the tip that comes with this Mini Smith torch when you purchase it. You do also have the option of an additional purchase with the rosebud tip. I'm still on the fence about it. I haven't made up my mind about it yet. Got to do some more experiments, but it's another option if you feel a bit more comfortable because you're further away from the flame. So if you're doing a big melt, you're doing a bangle, it can get really hot and your knuckles do sort of like singe a little bit. So it is a great option for saving the hair on your knuckles. When you're doing such a large melt, maybe the rosebud tip is ideal for that situation. But as far as making the metal melt faster or hotter, I can neither confirm nor deny that. All right, so let's get into casting this. Pretty much I'm going to say you're going to need a really hot flame. You're going to get it to as hot as your torch can make it. And then you're just going to dump the metal down the hole really quick, making sure that you keep the flame on it the whole time because you need that metal to be piping hot and you're literally dumping the metal down the hole. You're not pouring it down gently. You're going to dump it. All right, here we go. All right, so I didn't have enough metal.
Really? After you put that extra in?
Yep, that's right. I should have been extra. So the reason why I know I didn't have enough metal is because I've got no button. I can't see the button.
Oh, no.
But this is what it looks like when you don't have enough metal. It's unfortunate because when you don't have enough metal, you don't have that extra weight of all of the, I guess, the gravity pushing all of that molten metal in there and forcing it up the extremities of the design. So you don't have any force to really press it up against all of that detail. So because it's lazy, it needs to be forced to do things. You've got to really bully metal. And this metal, I've been too nice to it. It's going to be really lazy and it's not going to pick up all that detail like I wanted it to. Really disappointed.
No, good lesson for everybody, Kirra-lea.
But because there's no button, there is a chance I can re-pour this mold without remaking it. There is that chance. So let's open this up and have a little look. Because sometimes if your design hasn't been damaged, if your mold hasn't been damaged, you can recast. Yeah, okay. So can you guys see that? I didn't have enough metal. So I should be able to flip that out and see how it's not damaged at all. Yes, it is black and burnt, but it's still holding its shape and all that detail is still in there. So let's close that up again. And we can recast right now. But before I do that, I'll just quickly show you the shell. What I will do is I won't melt this one down again. I will put it to the side and we can compare the two after I've cast this one. So because there's no stones in this casting, I can quench it so that I don't accidentally drop it on myself like I almost did. So I know it's a little bit hard for you guys to see that, but it's not as textured as it could be. So I'll set that aside. I'll do it properly this time, I promise. And then I'll have something really good to show you when we can compare the two.
So that blackness on the clay won't have any effect at all?
No, it should still be fine.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a little bit of a fuzzier version of the shell, maybe. Sometimes that happens, like a bit of a ghosty version. We'll see. I'll let you know. Usually it's fine. Because
well,
it wasn't.
You've taught one of our viewers that they didn't realise you could cast in the same mould. So.
Oh, cool. If it's undamaged, though.
Because it was
so
undamaged,
the clay has been undisturbed. It's black, but it's undisturbed, which means there's no cracks. There's the black clay hasn't crumbled away. I can still use it. The impression is there. It's still fine to use. So let's go again. I've got a lot more metal in here this time, so hopefully that'll be better. So you get really used to your own torches, and when you use someone else's, even though it's the same Mini Smith torch, it's LPG, it's oxygen, they've got a regulator. The regulator's probably set at something a little bit different, but it just feels so different to my own torch. So I haven't quite gotten used to it yet. As you can see, I've blown it out a few times and had to reignite it. But you just get very used to your own tools. There we go again.
There's evidence.
my torch can get a lot hotter because my regulator's set much higher. So I can't take this torch to the same, I guess, ferocity of heat, but it still does the trick. Much better.
Hey, well done. So that did take a lot longer to heat up than it does on your torch at home, Kirra-lea.
Yes, yeah. I'm not going to go change Ingrid's. I'm not going to go change her regulator settings because that's like a jewelry no-no. Don't touch another person's regulator. So I've just got to work with what I have here. Ingrid has an extraction system that seems to work pretty well. So I'm just trying to make all that smoke go up into that extractor because it works pretty good. I don't have to wear a mask because I'm quite protected. It's not coming over near me. Let's open this up. But she does actually have a smoke detector like pretty much above this soldering bay, which is scary. And I have set it off before. And this is not just a shop. This is a series of shops. I'm in a building and there's residential above. So when I set it off, it was a big problem.
Oh.
Yeah. There was like, families have come down with their swaddled babies down to the meeting point. And there were people with cats and cat carriers. There was all these people milling around. And people go, do you know what's happened? Why, what happened? Is there a fire? Was it one of the restaurants? And people are asking me, like, do you know what's happened? Oh, I have no idea. Yeah, I think it's one of the restaurants.
Yeah, best strategy, I think.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was so embarrassed. I didn't want them to know it was me because people were like, it was so hard to catch the cats. They were so scared because the alarm was going off. I'm like, oh my God, that's so terrible. Oh, it was the worst. So now I've got this like salad bowl that Ingrid's given me to like contain the smoke so it doesn't, like, the extractors are great, but if there's a huge plume of smoke, there's only so much it can collect.
Yeah.
So I'm trying not to set off the smoke detector.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify, Rizal has asked how many times can you use the same mould? So generally you'd only be using a mould once.
Usually.
But it's just the fact that this time, on this occasion, you didn't damage the mould on the first.
That's right. You can reuse it again and again if you don't damage it. So when you're doing vertical style castings, the casting comes out really clean, and you can just cast that design again. If the clay was undisturbed, burnt, but undisturbed, you can just keep casting. Even if it is disturbed, you can cast right back into it. It'll just be like some weird, I guess, abstract version of what you were casting.
Okay.
So yes, you can reuse it, but right now you can't reuse that. Like that's just broken up clay and mush now, unusable. Let's quench this because there's no stones in it. You definitely do not want to be quenching your metal if there's your fresh casting, say, if there's stones. Right, so let's take us back over to the bench. I don't know if you can see, this is the fresh casting. And got that cute little texture on the back there. But I'm not sure if you can see the rest of the back is really wonderful and flat, except for up here where that's my air vent was, and I didn't flatten that down properly. But otherwise, it's quite a smooth back on that one.
Mm.
Let's have a look at this. So this is the failed one. So it does have a bit of texture on this front side of it, but it's not as textured as this one. The texture is really crisp on this. This is sort of like a fuzzy version. The edges are rounded and soft. And it didn't pick up anything on the back at all because it couldn't even reach the back of the flask. So let's set those aside, and I will put this back on my little clamp, and let's make the next casting. So that technique we just learnt was either called flat back casting or half cast. So let us know in the comments what you think it should be called. But for this next one, we're going to, it's called multiple sprues. It's very descriptive. We're going to have multiple sprues. So multiple spots where the metal is going to be filled into this design. Let's set up our flask.
So when you're going to pour it, are you pouring into one spot or multiple spots?
Yeah, it'd be one funnel, but the funnel will be fed into 3 different sprues.
Okay.
Just smooth that surface down. Put our talcum powder on. I really like these shapes. I got it from an op shop. It was a series of these shapes. I think there was like leather holding them together. It's got A and C on it, so I don't know if that's Angus and Coot, but I doubt it. I don't know what it's made of, but it's actually really, really bendable. Like I can really manipulate the shape, which is perfect because I don't want all of them to look the same. So I'll just give it a little bit of a twist so that each time I cast this shape, it'll be a different, I guess, a different shape each time. I don't know what metal it's made of, something really soft. I'm going to use my ruler to press that object into the clay because it evenly disperses that pressure and gets it down in there. There we go. Let's line up that registration mark. In my case, it's a giant hole, but in your case, it'll be a cute little line. Loose crumbly bits of clay, press it down with your fingers, and then just whack handfuls in.
Now, Kirra-lea, I notice you don't have too much hair on your knuckles, so I assume you've burned it all off. Is that the story?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, sometimes I'll come back from holiday and I won't realize that it had grown back and then it'll burn off again. But I'll notice when it burns off because I can smell it. Yeah, because there's enough of it. Yeah. But it seems to be every day at work, I'll just burn it off and not even realize. And it's just such a short, they're so short and stumpy anyway that there's no smell associated. But yeah, they have a chance to grow back when I'm on holidays. Or I'll just notice when I'm on holidays. I'm like, I have hair on my knuckles. All right, open that up nice and evenly. No screwing it open. Just apart nice and evenly. Let's get some tweezers in there to help us pull that out. This shape, I find it's a little bit thin. I always like it a bit chunkier. So what I do is I press it back into the flask on the opposite side, and using my ruler, I push it in a little bit deeper on the opposite side too. So instead of having like a 2 millimeter wide pendant, I'm now going to have, or thick or deep, I'm now going to have maybe 4 3 to 4. There we go. So now we've got really nice, deep, beautiful impressions. Okay. Every object's different, and some objects will have a very clear front, some will have a very clear back. In this case, it doesn't really have a front or back, so I can decide which side I want to turn into the back by creating sprue holes. So I'm going to choose the male to create the sprue holes in. The main reason why I'm doing that is because I want the metal to have less to travel. So because this female is deeper than the male, there's like a little bit more the metal has to travel through this one opposed to this one. So that's the only reason why I've decided to choose the male half to do the sprue holes in. And I'm going to do the sprues in 3 points. 1, 2, 3, roughly evenly apart. And I'm going to use my straw. I'm going to come in on quite a strong angles, because the idea is I want these 3 sprues to meet in the middle. So see how I've come on a really strong angle? And it's come out there. So I want these 3 sprues to meet and make one funnel where they all meet.
There you go.
Oh yeah, all right. Look, it's a bit of a fiddly process, just in the sense you've got to, it's not as fast as just creating the one sprue hole with the one funnel. Like, there is a little bit of fussing to get it right, because when you are creating your yeah, that's not good. I just knocked a bit of clay out of the side here. Ooh. Out of this here, which means if I left it like that and I poured my metal into this flask, it would just leak out this hole here like a bung in a dinghy. All right. But it's easy enough to repair, so I'm just going to pick up some clay and I'll just patch that up, just like that. Very forgiving.
No,
you
that's
just
the beauty
have to
of having that happen,
be mindful,
because everyone else will make the same error at some stage. So.
That's it. It's always good to have your object on hand so you can do quick little repairs like that. All right, back to creating this mega funnel. So essentially, each of these sprues have their own little funnel you're creating, but those little funnels have to meet in one mega funnel. And you have to create these funnels so that they're quite even. You don't want the metal to favor going down one of them over any of the others. You want it to be quite even. So the metal is split evenly through these 3. So I'm going to do a bit of fussing here and getting it all sorted, and then I'll show you properly. You sort of have to have like a little apex that you aim for with your molten metal that will split the metal 3 ways. It's like a little knife point, a little ridge. Let's clean up those holes. All right, let's get the object and push it back in, because I'm not sure if you can see, but there's sort of these cracks.
Yeah.
So let's push that back down again. So just gently push on it, okay? Don't push too hard, because this is quite a weak point here now. So you don't need to push much. The clay doesn't need much to just be gently coaxed into going back into its position.
So I might just ask you a few questions if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So Cole said he's enjoying what you're up to so far. He just said for this amount of metal, like with your last pour, do you need to use anything to stop the metal oxidizing?
What does he mean? I don't know what that means. The silver is always going to oxidize. I will chuck it in the pickle after I've cast it, because at the moment they're tarnished. And I'll chuck them in the pickle, and that will remove the tarnish from the surface, but they'll still have fire scale on the surface of them. But with organic things like this, I tend to blacken them and then rub them back a little bit, so the fire scale isn't a problem. But also my crucible is seasoned with borax, so that helps a little bit with keeping the metal clean. It also helps prevent it from, I guess you'd say, oxidizing. If that's what he means, in the sense, like if you're soldering something, you need to have flux on it to stop the metal from oxidizing so it stays clean. Right. The borax acts like that too, if that's what he means.
If you need any further clarification, Cole, just drop us another comment. And Cheryl has asked, do you ever end up with clay in the finished piece?
Inside of it, I would only end up with clay inside of the finished piece if I hadn't cleaned out my sprue holes and funnels, and loose bits of clay followed my molten metal into the flask. Then I would have clay trapped inside of my my form. And sometimes you won't know because it'll be deep inside of it. And sometimes it'll be a ring shank, and you'll file that ring shank and you'll hit a crater of burnt clay, and then your ring shank's ruined. So yes, sometimes, but only because you haven't cleaned up your sprue holes and funnel properly. So it's totally avoidable.
There you go. Thanks for that, Cheryl. Okay, that's all from me for the moment.
All right. So I'm just going to crisp this up one last time before I do the air vents.
And one of our viewers just asked if they can watch, they missed the start, can they watch it from the start? Yes, this will be on Facebook straight after we finish to watch again. And we also store these videos on the AJS website, which is ajsonline.com/demos. And just for people who are watching Kirra-lea for the first time, she's done a few other videos which will give some more elementary steps and basics. So if you'd like to view those again, please just go to ajsonline.com/demos. Okay, thanks, Kirra-lea.
Easy. So we've got our 3 holes inside of our form. So you can't have those holes just next to your object impression. It has to be going straight through them. You need maximum contact with these sprues. Just notice a little bit of clay in there. Let's tidy that up. All right, and this is what it looks like at the back. So they're 3 mini funnels opening up into one big funnel. And see how there's sort of this apex, this point right there? That's where I want to hit, right there in between those 3. And the metal should be evenly split between those 3 so that they fill these at the same time, and they're still molten, they're still liquid, and they crash and meet together in these points here. So to encourage them to crash and meet together in between all of these holes, that's exactly where I'm going to put my air vents, in between each of these sprue holes. All right, let's close up this flask. Actually, you know what I'm going to do quickly?
What's that?
Just to make it a little bit more interesting for me, I'm just going to add some little balls using my my paper embossing tools. I'm just going to add some little balls, some little little extra flair to this instead of just being a plain design. Oops, I keep hitting that. Sorry. It's just very close. Oh, that's a deep one. That's okay. I can always file that down. The deeper you press into the clay, the prouder your impression will be. But it's always better to have more metal to work with than not enough. So I know that I can just easily file that ball down that I just made massive. Where if you do it too shallow, you won't have very much to work with. And you can't really put stuff, well, you can solder metal on if you wanted to solder metal onto it. But the whole reason you're casting is usually to avoid all of those processes. You want to get it right in the casting. So I'm just giving it a gentle push, making sure not to press on my air bends. I'm just giving the clay a gentle push underneath with my thumbs and on top with my fingers, because when I made the flask, the two clay surfaces were flush together. And as I pushed that object deeper into one side and doing the funnels in the other side, I may have made them spread apart a little bit. So by pushing on those two clay halves, I'm hopefully pressing them nice and flush together again so that we have no line of parting. All right, let's come on over. This burnt clay. Let's put that over here. Pop that there. And I'm going to need some metal, so I better use those bolt cutters to cut off that sprue. Alrighty, I'll set you guys up. How is that? You can see, Peter?
Yep, perfect. Thank you very much, Kirra-lea.
Wonderful. All right. I don't think that's enough metal. What I'm going to do is that other shell, I might just melt it down. So the shell that didn't cast properly, I'm going to use that for this project. Safety glasses on. You will need a lot more metal for a casting with multiple sprues, because you'll need 3 times the metal, because not only are you trying to fill, extra metal to fill one sprue, you've got 3 sprues to fill, because you do need like a button on each of them. You need that extra gravity. They do need to be filled. So you will need extra metal when you're doing multiple sprue castings.
So Kirra-lea, just before you start, just for those who've missed it, if you could just please explain why you're doing the 3 sprue holes, why that's an advantage.
Yeah, so I'm doing it with the 3 because some objects are just too hard to, they just will not cast with a single point of entry for the metal, because it's like in this case, I'm doing a pendant that's just essentially like a big ring, a big ring shape. So if you're pouring the metal in from one point, it gets too cold and it just can't make the way all the way around. You just can't make it, unfortunately. So this also works for bangles as well. Same idea, but the bangle's obviously a lot bigger. You can't pour the metal in at one point in a horizontal style flask, by the way. Horizontal, this is what we're talking about. Vertical is a different matter. So with the horizontal, you can't pour that metal in at one point on a bangle and expect it to fill the whole bangle form. It just can't make it. But you can fill the metal in from 2 points, 3 points, or 4 points, and it will fill it. Particularly bangles are great for this. This style of pendant as well. Some of your objects you might find that the metal keeps cooling down before it completes the form. And if that's the case, maybe give it a go with multiple sprues. Maybe that's the answer you're looking for if you really need that object to be cast. So it's just a little bit of a trick on how to cast bigger things that are, if it was one solid object, it would be easy. The metal would be able to fill it. But because it is a big object, but it's not solid. It's essentially a big piece of wire that's wrapped around, the metal cools down too quickly because it's traveling through a small space. It's touching the clay walls. As soon as it touches the clay walls, it cools down. So it just can't make it. It's a very long-winded explanation. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, thank you for the answer to Selena's question there. Thank you for that.
All right, easy. Let's get melting. All right.
You had enough metal?
Oh yeah, well, yes, I had enough metal.
Well done.
So I can see that big button on top there.
And you got your salad bowl ready?
I do have my salad bowl ready. Get some squeezes ready. I might just put that over that for a moment.
Yeah.
Quite
I've got another couple of comments you could answer if you like.
Yes, please. Yes.
So Rizal's asked, do you just put in the borax right at the beginning before heating, not during the melting process?
The borax goes in when I first get my new crucible. I will season my crucible with borax before I do any melting. And every now and then I'll have to repair the borax glaze on the inside. So I will sprinkle in a little bit of borax. I'll heat it up until it starts to melt. And then as it's molten, it's a liquid. And I'll literally just like manipulate the crucible around so that liquid glass essentially coats all the inside of that crucible. And then I can use it to melt. Okay. So it goes in before I melt, yes.
No worries. Yep. No, and that's all for the moment, Kirra-lea?
Easy. Every now and then, if I'm melting down some metal that's a bit dodgy or a bit yucky, I will sprinkle a little bit of borax on top of the metal itself to clean it up. But I'll only do that if the metal looks dirty. If it doesn't look dirty, I won't do it. Okay. Sure, I'll just do this thing. Worried about all that smoke. Yeah.
I'm worried too.
What I might do is I don't know where I put that key. I was going to say I was going to open the door, but I didn't leave the key in the door like I thought I did. But that's okay. I don't think it's going to go off. It would have by now, I'm pretty sure. So look at this giant sprue on the back of it.
Huge.
Huge, huge. Looks like a lot of work, right? But be grateful you have something to clean up because it completely cast. So great success. And that's how you do something with multiple sprues. And that's how you do something with a flat back to it or a half cast. So I'm not sure what people think it should be called.
Well, there's some negative connotations to do with half cast, so perhaps.
Yeah, okay, not half cast then. All right. Hang on. So we have to figure out how to use this.
Yeah, we're
yeah, okay, half cast.
Oh,
yeah, okay, that does sound bad.
So for our viewers, we've just got a slightly different technical arrangement today, and Kirra-lea is doing a great job under adversity. So well done, Kirra-lea.
I had to bring this to you today. I had
to. Yeah, the show went on. That's great.
That's it.
And if anyone's got any other questions or comments before we wrap up, please just pop them in the comments. That would be great. And if you've got something out of it, please let us know that as well. So we've had a really good audience, Kirra-lea. So thank you to all of those who have been watching on the other side. And I'll just, here we go. Rizal said, thank you, a fabulous teacher.
Aw, lovely. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Ugh.
Well done. So, okay. Well, you'll be back another time. Yeah, so we'll let everyone know through Facebook. So just make sure you keep following us on Facebook. And we've got some lovely comments coming through. Daphne, you did a wonderful job. Gail, that was awesome. Thanks heaps. Thanks, Gail.
Good. It was a bit of a weird one today.
No, it was great. And good we had a little hiccup along the way. So people learnt out of that as well. Yeah,
mistakes are a way to learn. Mistakes are important to learning.
Well, and the whole process is things don't always go according to plan, and you need to know how to tackle it, don't you? So that's
right. So it is good when it doesn't go to plan. Not that I intended for it to do that, but it's good. It was good. I was able to show people something that they might not have known how to do.
Indeed. Joe says thanks. Kelly says thanks so much for sharing your expertise.
Thank you very much for watching.
Yeah. Well, Kirra-lea, we'll wrap it up there, and we'll look forward to having you back real soon for another adventure in sandcasting.
That's right. And I'll send you photos of these so that you can put them in the comments. People can have a closer look.
We'll do that for you for sure.
Easy.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll say goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.